Hey everyone, how we doing today? This is James Sweeney, aka SplitSuit, and welcome back to another video. And as part of the Ask SplitSuit a Question series, a bunch of people asked hand history questions, and this one actually came privately via email. And Lee just wants me to review a hand that he played in a 1-2 deep cash game. So let's check out the spots. Okay, so in this hand, it folds around, MP1 opens, Hero decides to call, and Lee says MP is a weak reg who opens loosely. I normally wouldn't flat this, but knowing the cutoff and button were very loose players, I'd like to play a multi-way pot with a suited connector. Is this the wrong concept? Okay, so let's just talk about this conceptually for a moment. So in a situation where you're going to call knowing that it's likely going to go multi-way, what you're really doing, especially with a hand like a suited connector or a small or medium pair, or even like an ace-jack offsuit type hand, is what you're doing is you're trading a better price preflop for a smaller SPR going post-flop. Now, because there's extra stack depth here, everyone's at least 200 big blinds effective, at least as far as the main villains are concerned, MP1, and then the loose players and the cutoff and button. This is a situation where we can most likely expect it still to be a decently deep SPR. If everyone calls, say, cutoff and button call, and we go 4-way to it, it's going to be about 40 in the middle and about 390 back. So we're looking at, what, give or take around 9-ish SPR? That's okay. There's still a lot of play left in that scenario. So because of that, I'm okay with it. But you want to be very careful if you're starting with like 100 big blind effective stacks, because what you're doing then is you're putting yourself in, yes, a multi-way pot, which is great, but the SPR is going to be halved, so maybe like 4 to 5 SPR, and now all of a sudden it's much tougher to draw in those situations. Drawing hands, suited connectors, suited gappers, etc. perform much better when there's more stack depth, more SPR depth, so that there's more room and flexibility to bluff post-flop, semi-bluff post-flop, to actually take draws with correct implied odds, those sort of things. So I like the fact that you're thinking ahead as far as if I call, what's realistically going to happen. If there's 2 deeper stacked fish, I usually would obviously prefer to have position on them. So ideally they'd be in the blinds so that I can have ultimate position going post-flop. In this scenario, that's not the case. But if the cutoff and button are both passive fish, then I'm definitely very happy with this, because I don't really want to call here if I expect them to squeeze a lot. That's not a good thing for us. So if they're loose aggressive, that's not a good thing. But if they're loose passive, that means 2 great things. 1, most likely not going to get squeezed pre-flop, which is great. It means we at least get to see the flop, which is what we really want with a hand like this. And then 2, they're not very likely to raise post-flop. And if they do raise, they're usually going to raise to a poor size, which means that post-flop we don't have to worry about getting blown off our draw all that much, which is obviously a great thing for us as well. So again, I love the fact you're thinking ahead. In this exact scenario, I'm okay with it. There certainly are situations where I'd rather just 3-bet it, and I'm okay just contending for the pot pre-flop. But in this exact scenario, the way that you laid it out so far, again, assuming that the cutoff and button are both fish that are going to spew off a lot post-flop, I think there's a lot of validity to just calling here, inviting the multi-way pot, and going forward from there. Okay, in this exact situation, MP1 decides to continuation bet for 30. Hero just decides to call, and I like the fact that we're calling here. I think calling will induce extra calls from the cutoff and button, which is exactly what we want, induce those extra sources of implied odds. I don't really want to raise here. I think MP1 is probably continuation betting a pretty strong range, and I don't really want to get jammed on, and then I'm just sitting there with a 5-high draw. Not great for us. Rather call here, try to induce the other guys to come along as well, and again, because they're most likely loose passive, I'm assuming that I'm not going to get raised here a ton of the time, which is obviously a great thing for us. So we end up getting called in both spots, end up improving on the turn, face another bet from MP1, and Hero decides to jam. So I'm definitely happy that Hero's shoving here. This is just the texture where right this moment I assume that overpairs and single pairs are going to feel the absolute most comfortable, rather than calling and then God forbid the rivers like a 5, 8, 10, something that's going to slow those overpairs or single pairs down. So MP1's kind of repping that he has some sort of overpair, maybe a set, that kind of thing. So obviously I want him to put in as much money as possible, and I think if we jam here, he's likely just to feel pot committed and cry call it off. I think that the loose passive players behind us can certainly have single pairs that they overvalue, flush draws that they overvalue, that kind of stuff. Maybe they picked up like a pair and draw, like a 7-8, and then all of a sudden they're going to feel sticky. So ultimately I feel really comfortable. I think we're really far ahead of the average continuance ranges, like by a long shot. Obviously 10-8 could be in there, but there aren't a ton of combos of it. So ultimately, I definitely feel like we have the best hand by a long shot, and the second best hands can and will gladly continue. So I like the fact that we're shoving as opposed to just flatting. I think too many players would at least consider a flat here, and I think this is definitely the wrong situation for it and against the wrong opponents, more specifically. We end up getting called by the cutoff. MP1 gets it in as well. River is the 7 of spades, and unfortunately the cutoff had 10-8 of spades all along. But ultimately that makes up such a super small percentage of his overall range. Again, Hero's post-flop line looks totally fine and good. I like the fact that we're just flatting the flop continuation bet. I like the fact that we're jamming over the turn when we improve. Ultimately, post-flop look really good. The main inflection point, however, was really pre-flop. And again, understanding if you're going to call an open raise with a suited connector and you're expecting a multi-way pot, understanding the trade-off, you're getting multiple sources of implied odds for a smaller SPR, but when there's deeper stacks, obviously the SPR can be much more reasonable and something that's going to be much better for you even when you don't have absolute position. So Lee, thanks for the great hand, and if you or anyone else has a poker-related hand or question, feel free to leave it on our Google Plus page. Leave a link for that in the description box, and also please make sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying these types of videos. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, good luck out there and happy grinding.